You're good to go, Mr. Miller.
Thank you. I would like to call the June 1, 2020 meeting of the Cuyahoga County Council Finance and Budgeting Committee to order, and the clerk will please call the roll.
Calling the roll, Mr. Miller,
Here.
Mr. Tuma,
Here.
Ms. Simon,
Here.
Mr. Gallagher,
Here.
Mr. Strawn,
Here.
Ms. Brown,
Here.
Ms. Baker.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. And has anybody signed in for public comment?
No, Mr. Chair, no one signed in for submitted public comment.
My colleagues, while it's not the purpose of this meeting, silence can be seen as complicity, and I feel compelled to make a few brief remarks about what is going on in our country. I deplore the shocking, senseless, and unprovoked murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis by officers sworn to protect everyone's safety. This event, coupled with the wide racial disparities and prevalence of COVID-19, demonstrate how deeply embedded racism is in the fabric of America. We all, and especially our community's leaders, have responsibility to find solutions to build a community with equal opportunity, health, and safety for all. I support peaceful demonstration and protest consistent with our country's principles of free dissent, and also call upon all citizens to renounce destruction and violence as they only make matters worse. I also express my gratitude for all county and city employees and volunteers who have assisted with cleanup efforts at risk to their own health and safety. At this time, I would like to request a moment of silence in memory of George Floyd and for reflection on helping America achieve its best and true ideals. Thank you very much, everybody. The next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes for the May 18th, 2020 meeting. Do we have a motion relative to those minutes?
So move, Brown.
Is
Second,
there a
Tron.
second?
Second, Tron.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes for May 18th, 2020. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the minutes for May 18th, 2020 are approved. There are no legislative matters that have been referred to the committee. So we will move on to our first item of discussion, which is the review of the ERP project, and we are going to hear from Jack Ryan, and then following his presentation, we're going to hear a brief presentation from John Scheffler on a related matter, which is the update of the on-base system. And I would ask, because we're going to try to complete 3 presentations today, I would ask people, if possible, to hold questions until Jack Ryan has completed his presentation on the ERP system, and then we'll have a round of questions.
Thank you. This is Jack. My name is Jack Ryan. I'm the ERP Program Director. And hopefully everybody can see a screen with the lead slide on it at this point. Is that true?
Yes.
you could acknowledge, anyone?
Yes,
Okay, thank you. Okay. Just want to start with a discussion about ERP Program Finances here. I think in the last presentation that I had with the Finance Committee, there was some questions about the numbers that we had used for both appropriations and budgets. One of the things I want to do in this presentation is to clarify those numbers. We have audited all the appropriations that have been approved through council, and we've audited all the expenditures in both actual and forecasted. We reviewed expenditures that were not included in the original $25 million charter, and we've aligned all of our numbers with OBM financial budget records. So we're confident in the numbers that we're presenting. Okay. So first thing I would like to do is just go through our appropriations position. The original appropriation for the project was $25 million. We had an additional appropriation of $7.8 million. And we had other appropriations in several different pieces that were done for a total of the $2.4 million that you see on screen, for a total of $35.3 million. We have the details of all of that information as requested in the last roundtable meeting that I had with some council members. There's a list of those included in this presentation. I don't think we have time to go through that in detail here, but if that's requested, we can certainly walk through that in detail in a separate meeting to answer any specific questions. But the numbers have been fully audited, as I said, and we have full confidence in those at this point. The actual forecast of our budget position, that is our current expenditures plus our forecast, is currently $32.8 million. We expect an estimated $414,000 in new change orders, and we had already accounted for $112,000 of that in the budget statement that's listed in this program. So our expected forecast budget position as of right now is $33,176,592. Okay. The change orders, this slide just deals with the change orders and our position on the change orders at this point. There's at this point 4 change orders that are expected. We are waiting for an estimate on one of them. We have actual numbers on the others. We also have some credits for work that is not required by the ERP program for $58,250. So the total net amount for those change orders is $414,000, removing, of course, the $112,000 that we'd already accounted for. The net increase in our actual budget forecast is $302,000. So this is our current position. Would also comment that we expect that we have somewhere between $250,000 and $316,000 of that would be COVID-19 reimbursable claims that are related directly to or the effects of COVID-19 on our project, either by requiring that we make changes to some portions of the solution, or by the fact that we had to delay training, causing other expenses, and to reorganize training in a way that would be effective to meet the COVID-19 separation requirements. Just to confirm, each of the budget statements here, not covering the budget in detail, but the red circled area at the bottom, you can see the way that we will reflect our budget versus appropriations going forward. I just wanted to make sure I highlighted for both of our budget statements where we were reflecting those changes on our statements here. In each of these statements, we reflect the fact that we have appropriations that are approximately $2.4 million over what our budget forecast is at the moment. Same thing is reflected on this budget statement. We've just reflecting that we've consumed approximately 93% of the appropriated amount. Not covering this slide in detail, but this is the list of all the different appropriations that make up the $35,370,168. There is as the slide indicates, and is also I sent to council members separately, hopefully it's been distributed, there is a detailed appropriation history in a Microsoft Excel model that everyone is free to review. Every one of these appropriations, virtually every one of these appropriations is tied to a council action or resolution number, as you can see. There's at least an extract of that text, and the purpose of that resolution is reflected in the detailed attached model. Currently, the things that we've done to react to the coronavirus and the impact that it's had on the program, currently there's still no travel authorized for either Infor or Mainsail consultants traveling in from out of state, and virtually all of them are at this point, or would be. So we're doing all that work remotely. Project work continues. We've completed for April all of the April go live modules, all of the pre-work for that. The UAT user acceptance test has been completed. Payroll work is continuing with regular meetings, including starting and progressing most of the way through UAT, which we'll talk about in a minute. Training impact, the core team training for the April go lives was delayed to allow for reworking of some social distancing guidelines. We managed to conduct, that said, we still conducted all the core team training for the fiscal go lives. And we have done the core team training for accounts receivable, billing, grants management, and fixed assets. So despite some of the restrictions that we had with COVID-19, distancing and working remote, we actually conducted training with both instructors remote and most of the students remote. We had students that did come into the building were able to train from their desk or from separated locations so that nobody was put at risk to get the training done. So that's a huge achievement by the ERP team. Really proud of the effort that they took to completely take a 180-degree turn on how we were doing training and come up with a new approach and execute it successfully. So just in terms of an overall program review, this slide just reflects the progress that we have achieved, starting with the somewhat reorganization of the project in 2018, and then, as you can see, accelerating progress where we've now actually implemented 20 modules of the phase 1 go live. And you can see how that lays out against both the percent complete in the program and how that lays out against the actual budget expenditures at that point. Currently, we're program-wide, we're sitting at 91% complete, and almost all of the focus is now moved to the payroll and workforce management go live, with the exception of some things in fiscal that we're going to talk about next. This is the project timeline as I present every meeting here for your reference. Okay, reflecting how that 91% is distributed across all of the modules that remain. So in terms of a program summary, the February go lives are all complete. And just to remember what that was, accounts payable, purchase orders, requisitions, cash book, treasury management all went live in February. The system is really normalized since then. Not that we've dealt with every single issue. We still have a handful of issues outstanding that we think are important. But by and large, the system is up and running, and we are paying all of the county's bills out of it. And we're beginning to work through reporting needs and turn a lot of our focus toward making sure that we satisfy reporting requirements that may not have been specifically addressed during the first part of the go live, and that agencies are beginning to raise now. The April go lives are stood up and in production. That's we have not for accounts receivable, billing, fixed assets, and grants. Those modules are up and in use by users. For strategic sourcing, vendor strategic sourcing, and contract management, the production cutover has occurred, and we are waiting for to put users on the system and vendors on the portal until we've actually completed all of the training necessary for about 130 users to make sure that we're fully able as a county staff to support those systems before we complete the go live action on those systems. The payroll launch is currently on the schedule for the first week of July, and a go and no-go decision will be made by June the 15th. The schedule to expand the fiscal April go lives is also being prepared. That is to take some of these systems that we've talked about that just went live in April and expand the use, for example, of grants management, fixed assets, billing, and accounts receivable into more agencies and more departments that can gain benefit from those things. Just as an indication of the stability of the system, I took this snapshot actually late last week of how we track issues. And the great news is it's wrong. We've actually dropped another set of issues. We're down to 11 issues that are outstanding as of this morning. So the team worked some of those over the weekend. And so we're considering a high of north of 60, almost 70 issues that we were maintaining on a regular basis at one point during the go live. We're very, very much under control in terms of being able to respond quickly to issues as they come up. The April go live activities, as I'd indicated, this just is a graphic that explains, I think, what I already said here. Pretty much we're really now in the very tail end of this process in planning out the phased rollout to other departments and other agencies for the fiscal modules. Some specifics about that. We stood up those systems on April 27th. Core team training was completed in early May. We brought on users as they were trained, and then the plan to expand the use of these systems, the accounts receivable, billing, that's the ARBL set, grants management and fixed assets, the GMFA connotation there, is something that we're looking forward to doing. Those systems are up and stable at this point. Strategic sourcing and contract management, we found one serious concern issue that needed to be addressed. It had to do with the way documents, supporting documents are managed. That's a change order. It was listed as change order 54 on the preceding fiscal slides. And that one is under development, along with preparing to open the vendor portal by doing both a mailing, physical mailing to all of our vendors. There's about 30,000 vendors roughly, and also an email mailing out where we have email addresses for them. So, and the training for the county staff to support this is about 130 users. There was a change order related to getting Infor to assist us with that training, since it's a in-depth training required for 130 people. This is the way the schedule lays out. Just looking at it in a linear fashion here, you can see what's been done and what's remaining to be done, and the specific dates around each of these activities as we finish the rollout for these last fiscal items here. Okay. Okay, just in the terms of training, that next 130 people or so training that we have coming up, we are looking at classroom training, if possible, depending on exactly what's happening with the COVID-19 requirements at that point in time when we get ready to start that training. Otherwise, we have become pretty experienced at doing training with the instructor remote and people remote, as I'd indicated earlier. So we are watching that very closely to determine exactly how we need to put the logistics together for the upcoming training. So. Regarding payroll and workforce management, this is where we are in payroll right now. We are still in the process of completing user acceptance testing for payroll. We are probably running about a week behind on the completion of that, and we're watching it closely. And we are working county staff and contractors overtime to try to catch up as much of that as possible. We also are in the midst of parallel testing over here. It's the reason there's not a checkbox by that. It's still open, and we're still working to narrow the gap between the comparison of legacy payroll check information and what's coming out of Infor payroll checks as we correct issues and close the gap on making those equal, so that we're getting the same thing out on the new checks as we get out on the old checks, or at least have explainable results where we know there's going to be some minor differences. So we haven't progressed beyond this point. We're still in the process of doing those things. A little more information on payroll status. Payroll remains, the implementation of payroll, as I briefed previously, remains separated from the WFM implementation. We feel that reduces our risk in a lot of ways and focuses the entire team on payroll alone, keeping in mind that many of the same people that are required to test the WFM implementation are also required to test the payroll implementation and to do the implementation. So we don't want to overlap those same staff. We want to make sure that we keep everybody focused and within their bandwidth to be able to support these implementations. Payroll UAT activities are close to completion. We have a handful of activities left to complete UAT. Expect that to be done this week. The parallel is underway. We're not yet close enough for production on those parallels. We are looking at a lot of details every time we do a parallel, just to define what that means. That's hours, gross pay, deductions, and net pay, and all of the details around those different kinds of hours, different kinds of delineations between those categories. So we've got probably 30 different items that we check in this parallel. Some of the key challenges that we're still working are garnishments. Garnishments is a fairly complex area spread, and it affects, we have people working on garnishments. We have a garnishments team, really, of people from non-executive agencies, from HR, from fiscal, payroll. All of these areas have to be coordinated to bring up garnishments successfully. We have union deductions for about 3,000 employees, and there's probably something on the order of 40 to 50 different kinds of union deductions that have to be converted to the new system successfully and then tested in a pay run. We have benefits deductions that are brought from the new GHR system into the new S3 system, and those have to be brought in for each parallel run that we do and tested. And then we're also obviously beginning to prepare to train not only the core payroll staff on what's required, and working on putting the communication plan together for communicating to employees what they're going to see on their paychecks. Again, the no-go decision for payroll will be June the 15th, where that's the date within which we have to make the call. Workforce management, we are still in parallel testing for workforce management. We did complete the integrated systems test for workforce management, which was the testing of all roughly 2,000 rules, and to make sure that at least each rule seemed to be executing correctly. Parallel testing means that we're taking the same raw hours that we get from the My HR system and the time clock punches that we have coming into our current system and run those through WFM and compare the results. So that parallel testing has been on hold till we made the decision to separate WFM out on its own path, and begins this week, resumes this week, as we continue to try to narrow the gap between what those hours processing and identify any issues there. We do not have a new date when we expect to start to go live with WFM at this point, but we do expect that date to be at least 60 days after the payroll go live date to allow us payroll to be stabilized before we start the WFM rollouts. WFM has also, part of that schedule has been affected by the fact that we have changes that need to be made to the WFM product or WFM solution related to the COVID-19 response, both federal and county specific hours processing changes that I think everybody is probably aware of. So the WFM schedule, the finalization of that schedule is still under review, and we expect to identify exactly what that schedule is this week and come back, and we'll come back with a separate briefing once we've identified that. Sherpa Phase 3 has always been tied to the completion of WFM, so that one cannot start until we have all the labor reporting in place from workforce management, and that'll start after the completion of workforce management on that schedule. Just an update on staffing as we get ready to conclude this portion of the briefing. We've been very successful at reviewing county hires, direct hires, for filling of the ERP staff positions. We started out with approximately 70 or so candidates that had applied at one point in time or another for different positions on the ERP team in the county. And over the last 4 weeks, we've talked with 32 of those folks who were qualified directly, at least to be talked to about ERP, interviewed all of them, and we have 8 offers either being drafted or presented during this week. So we're quite hopeful. We've got about 10 total positions that need to be filled. So we've got, at least 8 of those positions, possibly 9 actually as of this morning, identified with individuals, depending of course on whether our offers are accepted as they're put in front of those folks. So we've made some pretty good progress on this area, and we're hopeful. The ideal plan here was to take, if we can get these folks on board fast enough, is to include them in a boot camp training program. That was one of the change orders that was identified early on, and put them through the same training program that we're putting fiscal and OBM staff through, so that they get a good grounding in the functionality of Infor before we, or as we put them to work to support the system. Because the folks that we're hiring are not Infor trained, but they are good, qualified, experienced folks. Several of them with ERP experience, just not with the Infor product. So we've got I think a good chance to do a great job in supporting the program and supporting the future implementations going forward with county's own staff. One last thing, the question had been asked about where we at with Mainsail Staffing. Right now, the current Mainsail contract, which as I think everybody on council knows, fulfills a need of backfilling county positions until staff can be brought on and fully trained and handle an implementation, the future implementations going forward. This is the yellow marks on the upper section of this represent the roll-off dates for various people, various positions in in that schedule. So right now, we have adequate staff to take us through August in the implementation. We have, and that concludes the formal portion of this section of the briefing. And I'll yield the floor for questions. Sir.
Okay, we're open to questions from my colleagues. Who would like to begin?
Mr. Chairman?
Councilman Tron.
I think that was Gallagher.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Gallagher.
Councilman Gallagher.
Just a note as we go forward on the reporting of the numbers, and this is something that sticks in my craw, maybe not others, but just putting out there 25 million as the budget. This was a $15.5 million budget plus a 6.1 million others that was added in for a $21.6 million project. The over on that was 3.4 million for contingency, and that's the way it should be reported. The 21.6 is the actual number, not the 25. And as it stands today with the numbers provided, we're 66% over budget on this project. I think it's only fair to be upfront with the taxpayers when this all comes to a head, wondering where their money went, and especially our employees that are being forced into furloughs when we're screwing away over $10 million on this project. The question I have for Mr. Ryan is, you said there's money in there for a COVID delay. How could we possibly dip into COVID money on a project that's years past due? How do you justify saying that this is in any way delayed because of COVID?
Well, first of all, thank you, Councilman, for the question. First of all, the COVID money that we're talking about here, the bulk of it has to do with actual changes that need to be made to the solution around COVID-19 changes in federal law and for handling hours and county law in handling hours. So it's not so much the delay, although I did identify the fact that we were forced to slip the schedule because of COVID-19, but most of that, if you recall from that slide, is related to changes directly made to the solution. Nobody could have predicted that, and it's directly related to COVID-19.
Right. You said that it was a COVID delay. That's why I said that. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay.
To Mr. Ryan, I have a couple of questions. And the first question is that in the timeline on payroll, it said that the cutover begins on 6/8/2020. When you say that 6/15 is the no-go date, I presume that you wouldn't begin the cutover until you have the go, no-go decision. So are you saying that the cutover could be delayed a week till 6/15, but not any more than that?
No, specifically what I mean by that is we've actually begun cutover actions, and if we were not to go, we could pull those back, or we can leave them in place by working with Infor. So we're doing a lot of things simultaneously here, pushing as hard as we can to save every bit of time in the schedule we can. And then we'll make the final decision on the go, no-go decision on the 15th. So we're pushing forward on all fronts, including preparing to cut over.
So Director, could you say a little bit more about what the cutover activities, particularly those that have already started, what those consist of?
Well, for example, we're preparing conversion files. We're preparing such things as list files that contain deductions, amounts, preparing to move the configuration files that control the Infor payroll configuration, preparing to move those to production. So a lot of these are preparatory tasks so we're staging things to get ready to move them into production. We're not going to be able to actually complete those moves until we get approval from Infor. Infor's approval, and there's two approvals here that we need to put in place. One is with the cloud services group at Amazon, which is the cloud that we're operating that the Infor solution is operating in. That's a board of, I don't know, 15 to 17 people. It includes Amazon, it includes Infor, and they make the decision about whether they think we're stable enough at that point to go live. The other half of that implementation go, no-go decision, of course, lies with the county and with Infor jointly going through a detailed checklist to make that decision.
Director, the one other question I have is about the WFM timeline. And you had mentioned that you plan to make a decision on the revision of the timeline by the end of this week. But my question is whether it would make sense to know what the go, no-go decision on payroll is before finalizing the WFM timeline, because the two are closely related, and it would seem to be important to know whether you're going to be doing this sequentially or whether payroll is going to have to be somewhat implemented at the same time.
Yes, sir. To clarify that, we can't make a final decision on the dates for WFM, but one of the things that I didn't focus on that's on slide 27 here is just a statement that says separation from payroll opens some new options. Some of those options are the possibility that we could stagger the implementation of WFM to reduce the risk. That is, start with a smaller pilot group and increase the sizes of different groups that we implement until we get all of WFM in, since it's complex and there's so many rules. So we can decide what the approach is, how long the approach will take, and then we can visit all of those decisions, and then have that all ready to go, and then knowing that whatever the payroll decision is, this will occur behind it. So we need to make those decisions, and that conversation will take place this week.
So am I right that what you're going to decide this week is kind of the sequencing and whether it's going to be staggered and that kind of thing? But the actual date of implementation, probably you won't decide until after you know what the decision is on payroll.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Other questions by my colleagues?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I'd just like to recognize that Councilwoman Conwell is attending the meeting.
Great, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Councilman, I have a question.
Okay, please proceed.
Okay, Mr. Rhymes, you spoke earlier about, I think I came in around where you were talking about the employees that you're going to hire. I was talking to Pernell on one phone and trying to hear. So I kind of missed that presentation a little bit, but my question would be, and you may have answered it, if you're going, if we're hiring new people to finish out this project, are they going to be done remotely? Are they in the office? How would that be spanned out?
Well, yes, ma'am. That's a great question. They'll follow the same rules as everybody else. This is new territory for everybody. Obviously, if the rest of the staff is, depending on what the decision is at the point in time when they finally accept, obviously we can run them all the way through. We've already interviewed them remotely using the same tools that we're using here. And so we've been through that whole process. We've done individual interviews, team interviews, all that stuff. we can take them all the way through the hire process, I think remotely. And then they follow the same rules as everybody else on the staff, depending on what the in-office rules are going to be. So,
Okay,
but we'll not slow down the hiring process, put it that way.
okay. And so these are new, determined, new hirees, because I thought we had talked about before, pre-COVID-19, that you guys were going to hire a bunch of employees, or are these something different?
This is what we were talking, I believe this is the same thing that we were talking about before, all along. We've
Okay.
been talking about building the ERP team so that the county becomes self-sufficient
Okay,
in ERP to the maximum extent possible.
so this has been about 3 or 4 months, right?
Yes, ma'am, it has.
Okay. All right, I just wanted to make sure I was on the same page. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Other questions? Okay, well, Ms. Baker, did I hear a question? You're on the
This is
screen.
hesitating a bit, if I may, and I don't want to repeat what's been said, but it is a pretty significant phase. So just to make sure I'm clear, I know you asked the question, Dale, about the payroll. So I heard that we are going to make that decision mid-June. But what is the fallout plan? Let's say we realize that July 10th, I think, is the first payroll check date. What if we decide that we're not ready for that July 10th? What does that do to the schedule?
Well, we have, at that point in time, and we have not announced the new schedule at that point in time. At that point in time, we would come back with a new schedule and with the minimum delay possible that it would take to implement payroll. So I'd rather not get into the details of that here, but, and we're certainly not trying to take the team off focus by trying to plan that. We've got the entire team focused on doing everything possible to make the dates that we currently have in front of us.
I understand that, but just for our purposes, the team isn't here. Are we looking at still a 2020 completion of payroll, or are we looking at perhaps going into next year?
No, ma'am. We would definitely be looking at 2020. We're not looking at a delay into next year. That would not be on our radar screen.
Would that prolong other, like workforce training? Would that prolong that? Is it tied to that? Would we be looking at a delay because of payroll was pushed out? I mean, what's attached to that we should be concerned about if we don't make the July 10th payroll check cut?
Well, as I was talking, answering Mr. Miller's question, it would be tied to the workforce management would be tied to the completion of payroll first, then workforce management.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So, to follow up on Ms. Baker's question, if there were to be a delay in payroll, is there a reason why we would have to delay it for a full quarter? Does this have to be done on the quarter as you're currently scheduled, or would a delay of like 30 days also be an option?
Delay of 30 days is not really a practical option. It really needs to be delayed a quarter. That
Okay.
said, what I should qualify here is that if we had to delay a quarter, there are ways to. There's a lot of county tasks that need to be done that don't require in-force full involvement. I would just qualify that so that it doesn't mean that it means that there's some opportunities to save money if we had to do that. And we'll come back with a specific plan if we need to at that point.
Okay, well, we're hoping for a go decision on June 15th. Not hearing any other questions, I'm going to call upon Jonathan Schiffler to present a related item on the on-base contract update. But when he completes that presentation, if anyone else thinks of any additional questions on the main ERP presentation, there will be another chance to ask those as well. So I'm going to call Mr. Schiffler forward, and as part of your presentation, I would appreciate if you could tell us how this is related to the ERP. I understand that it's somewhat related, but is also somewhat its own distinct thing. So if you could clarify that a little bit, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you, Dale. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen first. See here. Can everyone see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. I can see
Yeah,
it.
so,
We can see it, John.
okay, and is my voice coming in clearly? Everyone can hear? We're good?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah, so yeah, my name is John Schuffler. Thanks for giving me this time to talk about the on-base RFP, and just to give you a brief overview, I'm going to go into that more of how on-base ties to ERP. Basically, on-base is going to be the system that stores all the documents that are related to items in the ERP. So if you have certain items such as quotes, vendor quotes, or contracts, those actual documents will be stored within the on-base. So this presentation is going to go into the detail of an RFP that we issued for on-base in January of this year. So the RFP that was sent out to the public, we asked for 4 years of maintenance and support. We also need certification training for our staff, our IT staff here at the county. We're also looking to expand some of the software license, particularly for ERP and GIS systems. And then our on-base system runs on a technology that is becoming outdated, because the last time we upgraded it was back maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So we were also looking for a system upgrade. So in terms of the responses that we got for the RFP, we had 5 vendors that responded. We had Northwoods, ImageSoft, Blue Technologies, DataBank, and Navient. And basically we shortlisted those vendors to the top 2, which were DataBank and Navient. And basically in terms of our evaluation selection criteria, the team that was used to do the evaluation was the IT leadership, the on-base technical team, and as well as the Health and Human Services IT. So we ended up selecting DataBank for a number of reasons. Primarily, they had the lowest price. They were heavily discounted compared to the other 5 vendors. They also had a staff that was qualified in Workview and API. And Workview is going to be that key technology component that's going to be used in the child support system within the Health and Human Services Agency. So they're looking to expand that system so we can collect more money to support the children as part of those programs. We also found that DataBank had a good experience in GIS and agenda management. Agenda management is the ties into the ERP system because as items flow through the procurement process, eventually they end up in a meeting such as this, a council meeting or a board of control meeting. And that's that meeting information is then captured in agenda management. We also, one of the things that DataBank provided was a free upgrade as well as part of their proposal. And then just kind of in terms of their government references, you know, we did get a list of references that they had that are currently using DataBank, but I actually cold called some different references, and we've got very positive reviews. One of their biggest government clients is the state of Nebraska. So they're very entrenched in DataBank, and they're speak very highly of them. So going into the budgetary items. So what I did, even though this is a 4-year proposal, I wanted to break it out into, start out with year 2020, which is this year. And kind of just to give you an overview of what the slide is. So all the highlighted, yellow highlighted items are the new modules that we're looking to purchase as part of the RFP. And I'll go into more details why we need these, what's the business justification. But just in terms of what we're looking for getting here, we have the maintenance that would start from May until the end of the year. And then there's also a customer care program, which offers additional support, such as 24/7 access to someone to call support. And then we're also going to be, as part of this RFP, we're including the on-base training. So that's really significant because in order to get support from the vendor, you need to have staff that's certified in on-base. So this is really critical that they get the certifications that they need so that we can open up tickets. And as we kind of talked about in the beginning of the slide, this on-base system stores all the documents within the ERP system. And it's critical, in terms of the overall ERP experience. If you can't access your documents, or if you're having issues, we need to be able to call support, and get assistance with those things. So the new modules that we're getting are the ArcGIS, which is a component that allows you to put mapping visualizations, attach them to the on-base documents, and I'll kind of talk a little bit more about that in my next slide. The encrypted keywords allows you to encrypt information such as social security numbers so that it prevents any unwanted access to that information. And then we're also going to be expanding our licenses, our concurrent licenses. And these are critical for the ERP because as we anticipate more demand for the ERP, we see a need for this. So just in terms of the discounting that we've gotten from this vendor, we're looking at we're looking at a 15% discount versus the GSA price. So so for this year alone, we're looking at a $50,000 savings. Our typical maintenance for just to keep on-base up and running is around $217,000 per year. And if you look at kind of the total for this year, for $242,000, we're really getting all these new licenses, kind of expand our capacity, which we need to do, along with the training as well. So this was heavily discounted for the 15 for this year. And then I kind of break out the budget for the remaining 4 years. So this takes us all the way to 2023. And I'm not going to go through all these numbers. I'll just kind of let you kind of look at it on your own. But basically, we are getting a 10% discount in 2021, and then it's 8% for the following years. So what we're doing, how this kind of breaks down is we have the, in 2021, we have the maintenance as usual, and then we're getting training. One of the things I wanted to point out is that in 2021, we're looking to upgrade the on-base environment, and this is given to us for free. And from the other vendors, we had quotes around around $20,000 or $30,000 to do the upgrade. So this is kind of how it breaks down. You have the share base is actually it's like a cloud storage capacity. It's heavily used by the communications department today and some of the other agencies to store documents and share documents online. So it's similar to like a Dropbox solution, but it's unlimited capacity. So what this boils down to is the total not to exceed amount for this entire contract would be $946,676. Just in terms of the overall discount against kind of the GSA pricing, we're looking at about $150,000. And then when we compared this proposal to the other 5, it was 20% lower as well. And as we talked about before, in addition to that, they had a lot of the skill set and the experience in their staff and support that we need to be successful. Because a lot of times, or in prior vendors, we would have tickets where we would actually open up a ticket, and then we would have to constantly get it escalated where they couldn't resolve it. And this company has a lot more expertise and they can address our needs right away. So just this kind of goes over the justification for some of the new modules that we're getting. So we're going to be the document recorders system, which is a public search for the public to access their recorded documents. This is going to be replaced by OnBase, and ArcGIS will be beneficial as part of this overall solution, because what we're looking to do is adding that mapping visualization component so that when you're looking through, when the public needs to search for deeds or plats, they can geographically see that information, especially during the COVID world, where it's more and more difficult for the public to access this information physically at county buildings. Having a digital presence will be much more efficient. And then the encrypted keywords, I talked a little bit about the Health and Human Services department that's building this child support system. That is that stores Social Security number, and really as part of our IT security guidelines and infrastructure, we need to encrypt that information. So that's what this module will accomplish. And then in terms of the ERP solution, for ERP, when you access ERP documents, when you request or upload documents, or for all of these applications, these require the use of a concurrent license. So what we're doing is we're doubling our capacity to, we're adding 100 concurrent licenses, which would give us a total of 200. This is really going to be important, as Jack was talking about. Once payroll goes live, we're going to be adding a large number of users into the system, and people will need to be able to access the documents that they upload into the system. We'll need to have that additional capacity to support those additional users. So this kind of wraps up my presentation. So if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you for that presentation, and Mr. Scheffler, I have a couple of questions. When is the anticipated start date for the contract?
Yeah, the contract, so we ended, we were previously working with Northwoods, and we amended Northwoods to take us until the end of April. So this contract would actually start the beginning of May, because we currently don't have support right now.
So can we do without support for all of May and for a couple more weeks till we get legislation passed?
And the sooner we get support, the better. I mean, because we don't really know what's going to happen next. I mean, we could have a support ticket that opens up. So I don't know, Jack, do you want to talk a little bit about the urgency of this item? Yeah, so I guess, Dale, to answer your question, I mean, the sooner we get this, the better. I mean, it's kind of a risk area. We have, like we were saying before.
This is renewed. John, was that to me that you were deferring? This is Jack.
Number till the end of the year.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, maybe you could speak to a little bit of this, because you kind of understand the payroll dates and all the other things that.
John, this is Jean. Can you unshare your screen for now?
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. And can you also make sure that Ashley receives a copy of your presentation so we can send that out to the council members?
We
Sure,
have,
yes.
Oh, you have that one? Okay,
we
thank
have
you.
copies, yes.
Thank you.
It was already sent out. So, Jack, you were going to amplify about the urgency.
So I think one of the questions was the urgency on this one. I didn't respond right away. So. Yes, sir. So currently, what's happening is that one of the most obvious things, and remember, and I'm sure John's pointed this out as well, that the on-base system is also the agenda manager system that's used to support all county council meetings, agendas, and the processing of documents related to that. So as we've added users to the system, one of the things that we're buying as part of this, as John had pointed out, is the 100 additional concurrent. Like now, although we do rounds right now, we have people. We frequently, because we have so many users on the system, bump our head on exceeding that 100 concurrent user license limit, and we're buying 100 additional licenses as part of this deal. And that needs to happen just as soon as possible, because that affects everybody that deals with agendas and everybody that deals with procurement and uploads documents, and it's happening pretty frequently. So there is some urgency. There's that and a couple other things, but that's one of the more obvious things that happens. That's what happens is a user gets an error that just says they can't upload their documents. There's a specific error message that they get associated with this. They have to log off, log back in, and try again. And so we just need to alleviate that problem. The licensing piece of this will alleviate the problem, and I think the IT team has done a great job of negotiating this deal, as John has already walked you through. So I would, if possible, because of the urgency around this and because of needing the support for not only the licensing issue, but the things we have going forward with the rest of our ERP implementation, if it's possible to get this on the agenda, to get it actually passed on June the 9th, we would request that.
So, Jack, by a concurrent license,
I think I lost.
do you mean a license that anybody can use, and then as many people can use these licenses up to the number of licenses that you have, but the license is not specific to any one person? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, Dale. Yeah. It's a use, it's whoever's on the system.
Yes, sir. It's not specific to a person. It's specific to, oh, sorry. Go ahead, John. Right. So a person, once they start the document upload, it consumes a license. Once they finish the document upload, it releases that license. It's just that we have so many people doing that. That's the good news, is that the system is working and we have users actually using it. We just, if more than 100 people are doing that one action simultaneously, we reach the point where you just can't release enough license fast enough and people get an error message.
Are there other questions by my colleagues?
Just a couple, Dale.
Yes, Councilman Tron.
Yep. Scheffler and Jack, Data Bank, you said it's a Kyocera company. So does that mean it's a Japanese written code as opposed to a US? Kyocera is a Japanese company owned by a big machine tool company. So it,
yeah.
Well, first of all, they're supporting on-base. So
is the question the ownership of the company we're contracting with, or
yeah, the company, where's the code being written first? Because Infor is a US made company down in Atlanta.
Yes.
Kyocera is a Japanese company. I'm just trying to figure out where we're buying it. And then you're telling us it's heavily discounted, which generally means it's being discounted because the host country is giving favorable status to create that discount.
They're actually they're headquartered in Pennsylvania. I think it's like they have a headquarters in Pennsylvania. I'm not sure what their connection is to the Kyocera company, but they are headquartered in Pennsylvania. That answers your question. I'm not sure. I can look into it more though, if that's.
Yeah, I mean, Kyocera is headquartered in Kyoto, Japan. So it says on your opening slide, it said it was a Kyocera company. So I can only assume that it's a Japanese. And I would like to think we could buy US-made products a lot more times than what we choose to sometimes.
Well, the on-base system is a US created product for
It
sure.
is. Yep, no doubt about that. Yep. It's this product.
Okay.
I appreciate finding it out.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for the presentation. I feel that confident that we can deal with this no later than the June 23rd council meeting, but I'll have to have discussions with council leadership and my colleagues to decide whether we're comfortable with dealing with it on first reading suspension. So we'll work on that over the coming week.
Okay. If there's any questions we can answer in advance to facilitate that, please let us know.
We certainly will. Okay, now we are going to move on to our consultant, Zig Berzens, for his presentation and commentary on the current status of the ERP project.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
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 Okay. And do you need to release it or so I can share my screen?
I believe you should be able to do that, Zig.
Okay. My question is now, can everybody see it?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Hey, so hello, everybody. I hope everybody is being, what's that?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just quickly before Zig starts. Zig, the only question I'm going to have to you, and I'm pretty sure you're going to hit it in your presentation, is Mr. Ryan in his presentation said he's 100% confident of the numbers that they presented. And my question to you, and I think you answer it in your presentation, is are you comfortable with their numbers? So I'll await your response.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I just advanced to page 2. Everybody see it?
Yes.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. So here's the outline of what we're going to talk about, and I will do my best to move through this relatively quickly. Otherwise, it can drag on, and some of it is actually extracts from a material that Jack just presented to you. So let's talk a little bit about where we are. On page 4, this is the chart that I have used for the last 2 years to kind of give you an understanding of the entire ERP solution and where you stand with regard to that entire solution. The check marks are the modules that have been launched. So that's good news. I mean, a good portion of them have been launched. And then the orange ones are the rest of the fiscal ones, which Jack talked about, and those are the ones that just recently have been launched. Although the reason they are orange is that they're not completely finished with all of their post go live support work. They're not completely finished with their training work. So that, it's still kind of in a gray state, if you will, in terms of getting people to use the product. There's an explosion, if you will, around payroll management. That is what's coming up. It's only 5 weeks away. That's certainly something that everybody should be paying attention to. The yellow arrows are the items that were pushed off to phase 2 several months ago. And then the big orange arrow on the right-hand side talks about the rollout to the non-executive agencies. That seems to be dragging and certainly is part of the overall final full deployment, if you will, of the ERP solution. Got some red X's there. These are portions of the thing that were literally removed from the work effort, especially the Harris Real Property Revenue Management System that you just heard, I think last week, some conversation about that. So the actual integration and connection to that system, because it's delayed, is actually not part of the ERP project anymore. And then down at the very bottom, there was at one point in time a report writing tool called Burst. Infor has, I believe, dropped support for that, and that so there's some effort that needs to take place by the county in terms of coming up with a report writing solution. So the good news, I think, just repeating what Jack was saying, is that basically, except for payroll and expense management, all of the fiscal components have been, basically launched as of the end of April 2020. And I list those for you, which is, again, repeating what Jack was talking about. The appropriation for the balance of the project, which is to spend for phase one, I think we need to recognize that that appropriation was focused on what was defined for ERP prior to the, to the pandemic. But you now have at least approved that $7.8 million, so they're going to be able to fund and take care of everything through about August. But if anything starts going beyond August, you're immediately there's more change orders that need to take place. I think it's a good news that, the pandemic has been, of course, difficult for everybody. But I think the perception that I have is that the team members really have transitioned reasonably well to working remotely, in terms of keeping the project going. I would remind everybody about this caveat for the fiscal deployment, and that's the fact that yes, they've launched, yes, they've turned on the system, but there's still more user training that needs to take place, and that's something we just need to remember. And I think, yes, that there is an effort, there is an intent to try to do on-site training in classrooms, but that doesn't mean that it will happen. I mean, so that remains a caveat, if you will, or an uncertainty. The whole business of rescheduling WFM, which is timekeeping, they link those two, payroll and WFM, together for the entire project, and now they have decided, okay, you can separate the two. And when they do that, we need to recognize that then the new payroll system will be accepting time capture from the legacy environment, would exist, and that work has been actively in development over the last month. And I think, but by deferring it, it means that they do have time now to update the WFM for the CARES Act requirements, and so that's going on, or will go on shortly. Shouldn't take a lot of time, but it is obviously something that has to take place. And the other thing I think that and Jack mentioned it afterward. After his presentation, that they are considering deploying WFM in waves. And I'm using that word waves because that's what was used for work orders. So 2 years ago, work orders, which is part of EAM, were deployed in waves 2 years ago, which you may or may not recall. Taking it very smaller groups in the beginning. I think Print Shop was the first one out of the box for work orders, and then going on eventually getting to facilities. So that's what they're considering doing. So what that does, of course, is that immediately stretches out the deployment time frame. In terms of phase one, this is a chart. This is a chart that is included in all their weekly reports, and the actual as of date. This particular chart is the latest weekly report that I have a copy of, which is the 5/15 report. And I just, just how to look at these things. I mean, the vertical red line is basically saying that's the as of date when the particular system was updated. And in this particular case, the master plan was updated. But the thing you can see right away is we've got several lines in here that, are basically saying they're not complete. I mean, and so you look at the bundle of products, a bundle of activity that was supposed to complete in February is only 99% complete. I mean, it's not done. And that was 2 months ago, 3 months ago. Then if you look at the next line down, you see line 1965, which is procurement phase 2, which is what Jack talked about, the strategic planning and contract management is 91% complete, but you can see on the bar very quickly, I mean, it's behind. I mean, that, based on their own schedule. okay? And then we have some post-go live support. If you look at line 2104, post-go live support, this is the activities of supporting the launches. I mean, so these are the April launches, and according to, as of 5/15, it's 0% complete. So nothing had been started as of that date. Yet, of course, according to the plan, it should have been started, right? Should have been started a month ago. And so the same kind of thing down below where I've circled in red. So I'm just trying to kind of provide you with a way to quickly look at these things and to kind of get an idea and an understanding of where things stand. We need to make sure we pay attention to the details. This is something that I presented to you last month in the report, because they were anomalies. They were looking like it was odd that they weren't complete. So I'm just giving you an update. So we're looking basically at this chart was from 4/17 weekly report, and I'm updating it with 4/25 report, and you can see that some of the things are done, and that's great. But we have activity, which again, admittedly, Jack mentioned is strategic sourcing and contracts management. We still have some things that are not done, and it's been a month, because this is basically saying this is what it was stated in April, and then this is what is stated a month later. So it's important to pay attention to what's left. I mean, we keep focusing, as we should. I mean, there's no question the team should be focusing on, let's get payroll launched. But we need to keep remembering that there were some other things that are not included anymore, and people are not talking about them. And so this is the list. This is the list of all the modules, okay? And so there's, I think, 29 or 30. So there's all the modules, and many of them are implemented. Many of them are launched, and that's a good thing. But we've got to recognize that payroll management is important. It's crucial, critical. We've known it was on the critical path for a long time, and so it's there highlighted in yellow. That's still to be finished. But I think we need to recognize that workforce management now is not part of that. Okay, so I'm suggesting we need to make it orange, and the orange are the things that are basically pushed off into phase 2. All right, so budget management cannot complete until WFM is launched. Okay, so if they get pushed off into phase 2, and enterprise asset management, there's a bevy of functionality in that particular module that was never implemented, and is part of the county's plan to finish. But that's obviously pushed off into 2021 because of the focus on what has to be done this year. Talent management and expense management are the two things very specifically that still need in-force support because of their knowledge of their product. Those two areas are part of phase 2 officially. So this is, in terms of project status on page 13, this is the way we've been kind of tracking the status based on the weekly reports. And the coloration is something that we've created. The actual direction of the arrows excuse me, I'm confused, I'm sorry. The coloration is indicative of what the project team says is their status, okay? And clearly, red is not good. And the concerning thing that I keep seeing here is that since the beginning of March, the project team has considered the payroll module status as being in trouble. And the official terminology when they talk about red is significant issues exist and there may be a milestone or scheduling impact. And that was discussed on 3/6, and it's still there as of 5/15. To me, that's a harbinger of trouble. How is the project progressing? I have been doing this for a while as well. And here is where the coloration scheme is something that we've created to try to show you changes. So if something is green, it's basically saying that the percent complete got better, it increased. If it's yellow, it basically said it stayed the same. If it's red, it said it actually went the opposite direction. So if you take a look at, the one that's kind of alarming is you say May 8th, you say the prior week, May 1, the percent complete for payroll was 81%. And then it actually went the opposite direction the following week, oddly. Okay. And then stayed the same the week after that. And so even percent complete is not saying a very good story here, specifically with regard to payroll. Okay. There has been inconsistent progress reporting. So, obviously the picture I was showing you is a yo-yo. I mean, there tends to be this up and down from week to week and from month to month. We seem to have examples of an up and down situation. So the payroll launch, as I've said, with only 5 weeks to go, the progress continues to be murky. I mean, how do you go from 81 to 80 to 81% complete? The required monthly reports have consistently been several months in arrears. The latest one addresses 2 months of progress at one time, as of 2/28, with no report for March and April. Now, yes, there have been monthly briefings, but the report has not been there. And so here's some examples from those briefings, because even the briefings have been a little inconsistent and up and down. So if you take a look at, this is from in the upper left, the March 16th briefing to the Finance Committee. So that was what was presented. And, so we sit there and go, okay, February go live, they're done and they're in support. And the question that I have and continue to have is, what does in support mean? Because it seems to me like the team is doing an awful lot of support work as opposed to the IT department. In other words, is it really in production? So then the go live statement for the finance and procurement, they were targeted for April 20th. They got moved to April 27th, and then the training got pushed out. In other words, the training theoretically was supposed to be done on April 27th, and it got moved out into May. Okay. Now notice that the phrase here, phase 2 plan draft to be reviewed by the Executive Steering Committee. That was on March 16th. If you go to April 17th, which is a month later, the exact same statement is there. Phase 2 draft plan to be reviewed by the Executive Steering Committee, and there were 4 meetings. I don't know. This representation, again, is in the briefings. But here we are, it says percent complete goes from 87, it was 87%, it went to 79 and reported on March 16th to 79%. And then 4 weeks later, down below, on April 17th, it goes to 90%. Okay, so we go up, it's in a yo-yo. Then when you say percent complete for the July bundle, which is what was basically going to be payroll and WFM, it went from 38% to 67%. And that's that line over there on the very far right-hand side. Okay. You would think that when you remove WFM and take some work out of what you're calculating for percent complete, you would do a lot better than it's indicating. So this also came from the briefing, the team's report on phase 1. And again, I'm comparing March 16th briefing to April 17th briefing. Got some inconsistencies there. I got some changes there. For instance, in 1 month, on March 16th, we were supposedly starting some of the non-executive agency activities. That's that partial green that you see on the brown boxes. Well, they're exactly the same 1 month later. Okay, so one would ask, what happened? Okay. So about this pending payroll launch. So I guess I want to repeat this, and that's the fact that the team themselves have stated that payroll since March the 6th, go down here where it says the arrow color legend, and then it says red in the middle of the page, red, significant issues exist which could impact project milestones. And it just hasn't changed. I mean, to me, that's alarming, especially since if you're going to be launching 5 weeks from now, one would think that you would be on track, no significant issues. Will there be issues? Of course there would be. But on track, I mean, in other words, are you on track 5 weeks from now to turn the system on? One would think that that'd be the case, but because the last report I've seen is 5/15. So 2 weeks have already gone by. I have no idea of whether or not that's changed. And if it doesn't change and we get those reports a week or two from now, how many weeks do you have left before you launch?
Mm-hmm.
Then we look at the milestone chart. We know that WFM has been moved. We understand that, but the problem here is that I just wanted you to see the changes. I mean, so this is from 3/6. This is the project graphic from the 3/6 weekly status report. That's March, beginning of March. And so I'm sitting there saying, okay, well, when is the parallel testing going to? Because we've already changed from 3/25/20. That was when everybody thought it was going to finish, and now clearly it has not. We got these payroll UAT, these payroll dates over here, and you see payroll UAT, and it was in March was 5/29/20. Now it's 6/5/20. 14 training 6/19/20. So those have all been changed, and with the prior weeks showing red condition, I'm very concerned. So this is kind of some of the changes we see now. WFM milestones, we got to recognize that, and I think Jack has already indicated that those are going to be changed. But we just need to make sure we know exactly which ones are going to be changed and which ones are going to be dropped out. And I think they need to include a fairly major component in here for finishing all this whole thing, which is I got to do this CARES development configuration work. Okay, I mean it seems to me like that's a critical path kind of an item. So has the team reached another tipping point? I would suggest to you that the pressure has increased so much and the project team is getting overloaded. So I think it's a ride. Payroll is exhibiting harbingers for missing the July date, and I've described what those are. And then I also would say to you that, to my knowledge, there is no fallback plan. I think I have heard people say, well, we go out a quarter. But one would think that you need to also understand what effect that's going to have on staffing, on the schedule of other activities, and on spending. You already heard that the team's trying to fill positions. The TOIT's been looking for 10 positions for almost a year. And my understanding is there are only 3 offers, as of last Friday, only 3 offers have actually been issued. Okay. You heard that the Mainsail contract basically is taking the resources out to August. You already know that WFM, I think Jack said that WFM can only start deployment about 60 days after payroll. Well, if payroll goes in July, somehow you've got to get the resources necessary to work on WFM, and those happen to be Mainsail resources, as I understand it. So then the other thing I think we need to recognize is that phase 2 continues to be in limbo. It's been mentioned. You haven't really seen a plan. Don't really know how you're going to pay for it. Is there any budget? Yes, you now know that you've got some appropriation dollars, and so you've got some available funding. But how much of that is going to be used to take care of finishing WFM, finishing budget part 3? These are all things that were not part of phase 2. These are things that have been deferred because of this move of splitting off of WFM. That's been deferred. So there's going to be some costs associated with that as well. So the tipping point for both schedule and spend has arrived. The team will be making another major overhaul schedule delay and will require increased funding, in our opinion. So what's the outlook? We have the team has done a lot of work. There's no question about that, and they have worked diligently and hard. No question about that. And they have launched a tremendous number of modules. When you look at it from the perspective of, gee, there's 30 modules here, and the answer is yes, they have. And so if you look at this, say, well, these are all the bundles, the groupings, if you will, of go live moments. But I do think that it's important to recognize that none of them really came in on time. Okay, I mean, the first component was considered to be December grouping. Okay, well, that really ended up, that was general ledger, and that really ended up in 2-1. We had a grouping January, February, March, and the last one ended up actually going live beginning of May. Okay, then we have May, and the last one's going to be 6/17. The last one was 6/17. Then you had this October bundle from 2019 that got delayed and moved and deferred until December. Then we have the February ones of this year. Okay, those were accounts payable and purchasing. They didn't launch until 3/20, and they're still doing post go live support. Okay, 2 months later. April, that's bundle 3. Okay, that's tagged as being an April launch, and we're looking at 6/1. And then we've got the July bundle, which it looks like, if you at best, if you split off WFM and you have post go live support for payroll, you're looking at August timeline. So just kind of, that's our story, if you will. But then I'm sitting there going, okay, now we need to kind of understand how some of these things fit together going forward. Okay, and I realize that some of these things may not be something that everybody can tie down and with specifics, but we can come close. So I created a new bundle 5, a new bundle, and this is finished WFM. You can see that's the green line. So this is the work associated with finished WFM. I guesstimated the 2 new pieces. So there are 2 new pieces that are, you got to do this update for CARES Act, and you got to do another integration test because you made changes to payroll and GHR as well because of this. So I did some guessing on that, but it's a small piece, so therefore it's not going to have that much impact on the total picture. Now the rest of this are actually line items that I pulled from their master plan, which had their elapsed times and their estimates, but all I did was just pull them because they were 0% complete, okay, and pull them in there and saying, okay, we got to redo these, and so I'll put them out there in terms of a sequence, an approximate sequence of getting the work done. Now I have made an estimate for deploying line 2783. If you're going to deploy it, you're probably going to deploy it in 6 different groupings, which is going to have to match payroll periods. So my guess is that it's probably going to last 6 months because you got to match it to payroll period. And the question becomes, how many payroll periods do you do for each one of these deployments? Okay, so that's how I ended up coming out with. At best, you're probably looking at the whole WFM deployment not finishing until the end of March 2021. And then the thing that gets overlooked is that, we still have to finish budget, which is the personnel cost forecast, and that cannot go until WFM's in place. Now, there's some question in my mind as to whether or not you wait until all the waves of WFM are in, or can you do it earlier after the first wave? So there's a potential there for you make this thing shorter and have it start earlier than March. But if it's sequential, it starts in March and it runs, and these are the estimated times that they had in their plan for doing part 3. So I was trying to get some perspective here of what we're looking at here going forward. Now, these are ZCO estimates and timelines, not the project teams. But then when you sit there and you say, well, wait a minute, you guys still need to do phase 2. And the concern I have, if we go back and we look at this and say, it looks like the finishing phase 1 is driving me right into 2021, first quarter for sure. So with the deferral of WFM and budget management part 3, this work now appears to overlap with phase 2, because that was supposed to start in a month. So I've inserted their initial plans for phase 2 to show the overlaps. And the concern I have now is if the team continues with this overlapping situation, any thought of a pause between phase 1 and 2 becomes a moot point. And if you recall, about 2 months ago, there was discussion about, gee, we need to do a pause. Everybody's worn out. I don't know if that can happen now. So this is what happens with the effect of adding phase 2. So you can see up above, the blue line is there's new bundle 5, and then workforce management and budget. Those are the 2 pieces kind of showing in there. And then this arrow, this orange arrow, is showing that, hey, some of this work has to come after the other. So total rewards probably has to come after. Talent management probably has to come after. And expense management is the one that starts right away, and then the rollout to the non-executive agencies starts right away. But the point is they all, from an elapsed time perspective, tend to overlap each other. So now you've got a tremendous amount of additional workload on the project team in the fourth quarter of 2020 and the first quarter of 2021. So there's a possibility of some scenarios here in terms of how to wrap everything up, how to reach ERP's conclusion. So the finishing scenarios, I'm suggesting there are 3. You could launch payroll as planned, which is July, and deploy WFM in stages. If you do it in stages the way I was kind of guesstimating, you end up taking this whole WFM can probably finish in 3/31, and BFM might take another 2 months, and that finishes in May of 2021. Phase 2, based on those estimates from before, probably will go out to August 31. Scenario 2, you can't launch payroll in July, so you go to the beginning of the fourth quarter and deploy a WFM in stages. So those dates then become, okay, WFM, because you defer payroll by a full quarter, you push WFM out in full quarter into 2021. Same thing happens with BFM, and phase 2 stretches out because of that as well, takes you all the way to the end of 2021. Scenario 3, you defer your payroll launch to 10/1 and bring WFM back into a full rollout. If you delay payroll by a full quarter, you actually are giving yourself enough time to reverse yourself and go back to let's put WFM and payroll in at the same time as we were planning. Okay, so that's a potential. That then means that WFM launches 9/21 of this year, BFM launches 11/20 this year, payroll launches at 10/1, phase 2 goes back to 8/31/21 finish. So those are some thoughts about the finishing scenarios that I think should be considered. Let's talk about appropriations, budgets, and spending. Okay, I think we had a question about that. So I think the good news is that the team at least has finally resolved its prior understatement of project-related appropriations. So for the longest time, almost 2 years, everything was presented as being a $25 million appropriation and budget. You know, as has been mentioned, you know, the actual projected spend for ERP was rounded $21 million, and then there was a $4 million contingency. That's how everybody got to the 25 million. And then very early on in 2017, a good portion of that $4 million was budgeted and spent. That was about when I started. Then we have this unrecognized, you know, appropriations. When I say that, I mean that's what was discovered in Famous back in January, and the team has resolved that and has figured that out, and I think that's a good thing. And then with the recent appropriation increase for 7.8 million, so your planned spend appropriation increases is 10 million for that total of 35, and that is the number of appropriated dollars. And I think that's correct. I think you know, OMB and DOIT and everybody has pretty much beaten that one to death. So and now the project stands at a $32.8 million estimate there, and you heard Jack say, you know, with the net approach is some additional funding is probably needs to be budgeted about $302,000 for 33-1. And that leaves you with an appropriation balance of $2.2 million. Now, there's a strong tendency when you see something like that is to say, gee, let's decertify. I mean, we need the money elsewhere. But we've got to recognize that $302,793 is just to take care of the shift of segregating WFM out. It does not address the deployment approach. Okay, it does not address that at all. And as I have said, phase 2 is nowhere in here. Some potentially good news is that there's a relatively long list, and you see the list there, of deliverables that are contracted, that are budgeted, that Infor is supposed to provide. So no matter how much you stretch the deployment of WFM, whether it be 3 months or 6 months, those deliverables are in essence already budgeted, they're already planned. You know, Infor needs to deliver those for that amount of money. It's fixed fee. What is not covered, of course, is the whole idea of if you stretch it out, what about project management? What about technology support? I mean, so there are some areas that probably do need to be increased if you stretch it out. But at least it means that you don't have just a blanket, gee, let's add 6 months of time. The original appropriation was for the entire scope of ERP. I don't think there's any question about that. Now, over time, the scope became two-phased, and the funding got focused entirely on phase 1. So thus, the implementation of the remaining modules, about 10, and you remember the list from earlier, that those basically comprise expense management, total rewards, and talent management, but talent management has 6 pieces, 6 sub-modules, or whatever you want to call it. That's how you get to 10. Those are not planned, budgeted, or funded, okay, for phase 2. So what are our conclusions? Payroll is supposed to launch in 5 weeks. I'm suggesting to you that the probability for a successful payroll launch as planned continues to decline rather than increase when it's so close to the date. As of today, the team has yet to prepare its fallback plan. And yes, the go, no-go decision is scheduled for 6/15. Notably, it must also take into consideration the solution provider's cloud services as part of determining if the county is ready. Even if the county decides to go, it's entirely possible that cloud services will say you're not ready. And I think everybody needs to recognize that. The other thing that needs to happen is that the go, no-go checklist should be working. That should be used, and it should be used immediately. At the end of this week, there's only 4 weeks left and 2 weeks before the go, no-go decision. Theoretically, if you're going to make a go, no decision on 6/15, then that checklist needs to be completed, and 100% of that checklist needs to be green. Or if not green, if there's a yellow line item, then there certainly ought to be mitigating actions that offset that so that you can go. And I don't know if that's happening. Transition to IT. I continue to suggest to you that over the last 2 years, a significant number of modules have been placed in production. They are in production according to Infor. Infor treats them as production. That means that the $1.5 million that we pay annually to Infor is to provide support. So we need to be using that. And we need to have people in IT that provide support as well. They've been trying. I know it's been difficult, but that doesn't mean they should stop trying. And we need to get those resources in there, and we need to make sure that the project team doesn't spend time doing things that actually somebody else is supposed to be doing on the production environment. Bring phase 2 back into the fold. Now that you're probably going to be pushing WFM out, you're going to stretch out the implementation. More than likely, it's going to go into 2021. Probably should be. It's going to basically become part of phase 2. It seems like. But that means that you need to say, fine, it's now time to let's get this phase 2 thing finalized. Let's get the plan done. Let's figure out what our resources are, the tasking and budgeting, scheduling and funding, and get all that put to bed and find out whether or not you're going to go over the $2.4 million that you think you have available in the appropriation, which quite frankly, I think is probably going to be low. Because if you don't do all this, phase 2 will continue to be the can that's kicked down the road. Spending. A lot of folks, I think, have often heard the phrase, work expands to meet the time available. I would suggest to you that organizations tend to spend the funds that are available. And as such, decertifying the $2 million, you need to be real careful if you're going to do that. I think you're definitely going to need additional spending to finish the project, and you need to find out whether or not you're going to use all that $2.4 million or not. Okay. So the most likely wrap up for ERP, I'm suggesting to you the team will most likely defer the payroll launch beginning in the fourth quarter. And as such, they will then push the balance of this whole solution out into 2021. There will be several intermediate completions in 2021, but ultimately it probably will drag all the way to the end of 2021. Are there any questions?
Okay, well, thanks for that presentation. That was a lot, and I'm going to immediately go to my colleagues and see who has questions.
Chairman.
Yes, please proceed.
Hey,
Councilman Gallagher.
Zig, I guess you answered my question. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
This is Jack Ryan. I guess I appreciate Zig's perspective on things, but I certainly have since I am online and we're doing this in single meeting, I certainly have at least a different perspective on some of these things or clarification on some items. I'd like to be able to do that.
You
Mr.
may
Chairman?
proceed.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. Ryan.
Yes.
Mr. Ryan, Mr. Zig has a history of being upfront and fair and honest. And quite honestly, sir, as of April 1st, I thought you'd be gone. Now you give a presentation and now you have rebuttal. Your rebuttal should have been ready. Your rebuttal should be in your presentation. We have never been lied to by Zig. We have been lied to by this administration and quite honestly, sir, you. Go ahead.
Well, with all due respect, Councilman, I have never lied to you. Okay?
April 1st,
Never.
go date, April 1st. Do you have a
No, I
job,
mean-
sir? April 1st. Where are you
I-
April 2nd? You do not
I
have a
would-
job.
Yeah.
You're still.
I would
Michael, please, let's tamp it down a little bit. Give Jack a chance to respond.
I'm
to-
sorry, Mr. Chairman. I don't like being lied to.
All right. First of all, the non-executive agencies that we referred to were not, rolling out to the non-executive agencies were not part of the scope of the contract we're in for, not part of the scope of this contract. It's something we have elected to put into a phase 2 approach, along with some other things in phase 2 that were deferred and well explained in council meetings prior to this. So while we need to deal with phase 2 at some point, and we will put a plan together for phase 2, we have a tentative plan for phase 2 that was presented to council. We're not in a position to execute that phase 2 plan now, nor was it part of the budget, nor was it part of the original scope. Secondly, BURST, the reference to BURST is incorrect. Infor did not pull support for BURST. The county determined after examining BURST that BURST was not completely ready for us to implement at this point in time. And so we put it out of scope till the product became more mature. We have alternate ways of doing reporting, and we're putting those reporting procedures, not just procedures, but tools in place at this point in time. I guess the third point here was there was a statement made about appropriations, that appropriations would take us, that we would have to get additional appropriations beyond August. That's absolutely untrue. I think later in Zig's presentation, he clarified the point that we have over $2 million in appropriations once we did the audit correctly, and that appropriation would take us well into anything that we need or most things that we need for phase 2, maybe all of phase 2. We don't have all of those numbers, but we certainly have adequate funding. I would agree with Zig's statement that we shouldn't decertify all that money at this point in time, however. So to the point on February, the completion of February items, there is one item open that's caused us to keep February post-go live support not being closed. That's the reason we show it at 99%, not 1%. The one item is that there are some things that we need to do to be able to start closing the books properly month by month. One item. We're getting that item resolved by June the 5th. Zig's aware of that. And by June the 5th, we should start closing that up, and we will complete the post-go live support period. By agreement with Infor, they're willing, regardless of the time frame involved, they're willing to extend post-go live support till we get that done, and then we'll close out that item, which is the reason it's sitting there at 99%. Okay. Post-go live support for strategic sourcing and contract management. That, by agreement with Infor, we're extending post-go live support to start after the training period for 130 consultants, not before. This is something that I didn't highlight, or since it was brought up, we need to make sure that, that we're aware of the fact that this is planned at this point in time. Moving WFM to a phase 2 is really a matter of semantics more than anything else at this point. Phase 2 classically has been this whole group of things. The fact of the matter is, or workforce management does in fact need to be deferred. The fact that the statement that we don't have a plan or an idea about what we're going to do is absolutely incorrect. We have specific options that we're putting on the table that we're reviewing. Zig's aware of that. I briefed that in my previous presentation as well. And we will have a plan once we decide what the best plan is to do that. And that best plan needs to include not only preserving county staff and making sure we don't double book them, which is what one of Zig's options would do, but also needs to preserve as much of the budget as we can. So there'll be the right combination of things to get this done, put on the table and put on the table appropriately. Saying that there's not a plan and we have no clue is absolutely misleading, okay? There's a, I think the percent up or down that was emphasized through, I think it was 5 different slides to, sort of ripping apart the MPP plan or the project plan that we had here. It seems a bit over the top, okay? However, what I can tell you is that I briefed the council that when we replanned payroll and workforce management, we added more tasks to the plan. I know this is a discussion we've had before. We add tasks to the plan, the way Microsoft Project does the math, it'll decrease your percent complete. So we added those tasks to the plan, which caused it to drop or stay flat for a bit. As we began executing those tasks, it picked up that additional 10 or 11% to go back to 91%. That's why you saw the variance in the percent. And it was explained in a weekly report. It was also explained in briefings. And that's an anomaly with the way Microsoft Project planning works, okay? The WFM resources, not Mainsail resources, comment. Okay, I had worked through this and commented on this, but not in enough detail apparently to be clear. So we are in the process of training county resources to take over from Mainsail resources, especially in this area of workforce management. We are using Infor to do knowledge transfer to those county resources. And those county resources, along with Infor, the Infor resources for WFM, are doing that work. And so we're looking to do that with no break beyond the break that we've had at this point in time to replan WFM. The fact that we have 30 modules, Zig's slide has had 30 modules on it, which happens to include all of the detailed sub-modules for HR. He pointed that out as sub-modules, but I would point out that on all of our planning that we carry forward, all of those HR sub-modules, there's 6 or 7 of those we carry as a single one. So we're not 25% behind in getting things done if you count those as a single one. It's a matter of semantics and terminology on how you do that. The go, no-go decision and the admonition that we should use a go, no-go checklist. I have a very thorough checklist that we use. I briefed Zig on the fact that we were going to be using that. We'll actually do a go, no-go checkpoint every week until we, for the next 2 weeks until we get to the go, no-go decision checkpoint. That's already in place. The team's already planning for that. It's already being worked, okay? The discussion about the fact that cloud services has a vote in whether we go or don't go was part of my previous brief. And where there are specific dates with cloud services that we have touch bases, and we will at that point take that input, and that'll be part of the decision-making process. So I guess last but not least here, and there's certainly other things I could talk about and respond to, the fact that WFM and payroll, putting that together has inherently more risk, especially when you consider the county employees involved. We have the same HR staff, those same 12 or 13 people that work for Pat Smock upstairs that do the payroll hours also are involved in implementing the payroll system. So they do those WFM kinds of hours task and payroll task. If we do these things simultaneously, we know that there's a high probability we'll overload that staff. We're trying desperately not to do that. And, we've been driving these people pretty hard. We want to make sure if we can separate that out and not have a huge budgetary impact in the process of doing that, we want to do that. Okay. So those are just a few of the points I want to rebut here. But I have, just to come back to Mr. Gallagher's point, I have never lied here. I've always caveated things when I said I didn't know, or this is our best estimate at the time. A lot of things have happened since I came on board here, not the least of which is there was zero progress before I got here. And we have an upward curve. If you look at the slide that I had of general program progress, that immediately after I got here, which is about May, I think, or May or June of 2018, that curve turned up and never stopped and never went down. I didn't lie about anything. I didn't deceive anything. In fact, my byword has been, we tell the truth, we're transparent, and we're trustworthy with what I've been given to do to get the county live. And I have never wavered from that. So I take exception to that comment strongly. I'm
Mr.
done.
Chairman, I'll respond. Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please respond, but let's be respectful. We're all together
I
for the
understand.
same goal.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize for that. Again, I don't like being lied to. So Mr. Ryan, direct to you, it was a finance meeting regarding the ERP when you first came on, and you kept falling behind. And I asked you, and it was sometime early last year, when is this going to go? You said April 1st, drop dead date. And I said, do you have a job April 2nd? And you hesitated, you floundered, you didn't know what to do. And I forced you again. What do you have? Do you have a job April 2nd? And you said no. Do you have a job today, sir?
Actually, if you look at my specific wording, because I went back and looked at that council meeting after you made that point the last time. And what I specifically said was that it's the council's, and the administration's option to fire me at any point you want. And that's still true.
So you weren't truthful on the April 1st.
No, that's not true. That's not what I said. And you're not.
It's not semantic, sir. April 1st. Do you have a job April 2nd? No, you're still here. Nobody has paid. And you're in a long line of people that haven't paid for an over $10 million run. It's not all yours. That I understand. When you were a worker bee, you were just fine. You became part of the team, and all of a sudden everything goes south. I'm concerned that we're well over $10 million out of pocket, and nobody, and I underscore nobody, but me evidently seems to care about this.
Well, I'll tell you what. I would encourage you to take a look at that chart 13 from my slide deck. Okay, and if you look at the amount, and I can give you a more specific number, but before I ever set foot on site here, $7 million of that budget were spent. Okay, that's the reason that chart's in there, because I want to highlight that.
And I told
So
you that.
take a look at the lower right-hand corner of that. $7 million were gone before I ever took over.
And was that right?
Pardon me?
Was that right to do?
I'm not saying it was right. I'm just saying that's a fact. So if you want to fire me for everything that happened prior to my getting here, I guess that's the council's option and the administration's option.
It's the administration's
But don't nail me for $7 million that was gone before I ever walked in the door.
I never mentioned $7 million. I mentioned April 1st, which was out of your mouth, your promise, your projection, April 1st. April 2nd, you still had a job.
Councilman Gallagher, we don't want to turn this into a gotcha session. We're all not happy that the costs have exceeded the, what we expected by a substantial margin, and you can get different numbers exactly how you calculate it. We're not happy about it, but everybody knows that these IT projects are extremely complex and extremely difficult, and we've had a lot of challenges, and we want to try to get this over the finish line, and so I know that Jack has worked hard, and he hasn't accomplished everything on the schedule that he would have liked to have accomplished, but there have been a lot of challenges, and not the least of which has been the challenge of getting people to work for the county. And my colleague, you know about the problems with the jail and all the problems that we've had that have made the hiring environment difficult in Cuyahoga County, and it's been a challenge, and we all have to try and support each other and see if we can get this over the finish line.
Well, Mr. Chairman, my whole point is this has been a long and drawn out process. And I understand the difficulties involved. And I understand and I underscore, this is not all Jack's problem. But when he comes up, gives a drop dead date that we have heard time and time, not from him, but previous administration appointees, time and time and time again, and they all come up empty to the tune of over $10 million, somebody's got to stand up and say enough's enough. I've said that with my vote. I'll say it again. I'll never vote for another nickel going forward. The first thing I said to Zig when he came on, should we take a break? And he said, absolutely not. You're too far into this. You spent too much money. Well, juxtapose that to where we're at. I think it would have been a wise thing to do back then, but oh my. But anyhow, going forward, all I want to do is get done with this thing, but it's just worse and worse. And now you have Zig saying one thing again, and the administration's people saying the other. I don't know where we're at, so let's get to it.
Well, Chairman,
Do
if I
we
may.
have any other questions, Ms. Baker?
I have one. Thank you. And it's good that we have both Jack and Zig here, that we can ask a question. Sometimes we don't get that opportunity. One does and one doesn't in their presentation. But on page 13 of Zig's report, because the most concerning that's in front of us right now, and we have been here before with tipping points of are we or aren't we going to launch a certain module? Well, here we're in front of us now with payroll, and payroll is set to be made a decision in 2 weeks, which is 2 weeks from today, the 15th. And Zig is showing since March 3rd a red arrow, and he's showing red arrows all the way until May 15th. Does Jack agree that we are in that type of a caution, that it's not a yellow, it's not even going sideways, it's a red arrow all the way across? That would tell me, in the experience that I've had here with analyzing the ERP and all the different stages that we've gone through, is that a red arrow that many times from March 6th to May 15th is a pretty high level, we're not going to make it. So does Jack agree with that? Is he saying that, I mean, we need to know, we're not part of the on the ground team. We're a different set of people that he's talking to. And I understand on their level, he needs to make sure they stay on task the best he can. But we need to know, is this a fantasy that we're going to be launching our first paycheck on July 10th? I mean, what is the percentage of us meeting that goal?
I'm not going to quantify percentage, but what I will say is that I've been briefing this particular go live is high risk for the last, as long as they show the red arrows, okay? And so I think we wait till June 15th to call that shot, okay? But we know that we're at risk and we know that we have major issues. That's exactly the way I briefed it. And I think that's where we are. I think the red arrows are accurate. Obviously, they're coming from my weekly reports and Infor's weekly reports combined. So you know, I think they reflect how we've looked at each one of those weeks.
Wasn't
So,
the original
Jack-
deadline for December 31st to have payroll completed? And that we gave the extra 6 months so that we can take a more deliberate goal of July 10th? I mean, that's 6 months past the date of December that we were going to give in order to satisfy that payroll launch. What happened in those 6 months? And believe me, I understand the pandemic and getting people in, but all that was, except for the pandemic, was factored into those 6 months. And I think as Zig mentions here, even before learning of the pandemic, this was on schedule to be done at this time. I guess I'm just frustrated to know that we have delay. This isn't the first delay for payroll. This is the second delay. This will be the third delay if we don't make it July 10th, and it does compromise everything after it. So Jack, where are you on this? Do you think that we will honestly be launching, or don't you? You must have 1 month out, you have 2 weeks out, you have to know and prepare us for whether or not you think this is going to be a reality.
I still think we're at high risk. I think to answer you had 2 or 3 questions in there. I think, you know, the question is what's happened over the last 6 months. Team has been working hard over the last 6 months, but a couple of the challenges have been, some of the challenges have been just the state of the county's data for this is very bad, okay? And it's very hard to reconcile against that data. And that's been a huge challenge. It's been a challenge in other areas. We've overcome it in other areas. It took us a little longer in other areas, just like it, you know, some of those delays that Zig had highlighted over a period of time occurred because we were converting really, really bad data, even in the financial area. Now we're encountering the same thing in payroll and trying to reconcile both the data and the way the data is currently processed makes it very difficult. It's taken time to put the tools together to do that. We have put the tools together to do that, and we're running successive payroll parallels as fast as we can, correcting as much as we can each time, finding out the sources of the bad data and correcting those sources. But it's taken longer than anyone would have liked and expected, and I'm frustrated with that too. But that's where we are. We obviously can't launch payroll and produce bad payroll checks. So we've got to be within a margin of error that's pretty tight here. So the red arrows are accurate.
So Jack,
And until
Gail?
to follow up on Ms. Baker's question, I'm kind of presuming that you're just as frustrated as all of us about how long this has taken, and that we're operating in a high risk environment, but that you would very much like to launch in July if it's at all possible, and that we're holding out as long as we can, trying to put the necessary pieces together, and that it would be accurate to say, yes, it looks difficult, but it's still possible, and if it's at all possible to do it, we're going to do it. Is that a fair assessment?
that's a fair assessment. So we're going to run right up to the wire here and do as much as we possibly can to make sure we've made every possible effort to do this. Okay, every possible effort to do this.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Councilman Tron.
Obviously, the payroll of the whole salary program going live is directly driven by leadership sometimes in that respect, was the lack of change of our head of HR that only took place fairly recently, and that we limbered along through for 6-8 months. Would that have any impact on the bad data and all the things that you were just talking about? Because I'm a firm believer that leadership actually drives action, and we did not
Yes,
have
sir.
leadership in the HR department.
As am I. And to say that the loss of the head of HR didn't have any effect would not be accurate. Okay. Of course, there's an effect. It's not the only effect, and I certainly can't point to that as the only effect. But losing that leader was key because he was a driver. It's not the only thing going on. We still have all the things I've already mentioned.
But he also had to be a detractor because of the fact he certainly had his focus on other things for that. I mean, while all of the other actions were going on in the court system with him, it can't be a good thing.
I can't speak to that, but I knew though that when he was there, he was a key component in driving.
Okay. One of the things that if you drive a line there, it's saying we're going to go live and we're going to work right up to the 11th hour. You've also teed up your workforce to be prepared to go live on the live date. Sometimes, having been around these projects, if you keep asking them to be ready to go live when the live date comes, and then we're not quite there, we've asked them to like a runner getting ready to go run a race. It would behoove us not necessarily, I believe, to work right up to the 11th hour and say, I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to go forward in 2 weeks, because you've got everybody primed and ready to go. You will make the decision way before that time so that you know that you're going to get ready to go and you're going to make it, or don't hold the team ready like in 2 weeks, because they're probably, some are actually going to be working on weekends or overtime or doing all kinds of other things that they'll be disrupted from their family. Is that pretty logical in that when you go live that you're going to have extra work hours and overtime, maybe even a weekend in there?
We're actually doing that now. So we
Yeah.
have been doing that the last several weeks, and everybody's aware of the dynamics here. And one of the reasons, and I know you've implemented ERP before, sir, but one of the reasons you run a go live checklist and you run that continuously, not just once,
I know.
is it prepares everybody to think through all the things that are necessary for go live, and it makes it obvious whether we're ready or not to the whole team. And so we're doing all of that simultaneously.
Yeah, my point though is that if you work it all the way up there, they are also planning to go live on that day. And so they plan their lives around it. They plan their personal lives around it. You probably actually ask them to work extra hours to get ready to go. And then when you pull it out like the Lucy and the football 2 weeks before, it can be a little difficult on the team.
It's demoralizing if we do that. So the 15th, everybody knows the 15th is the date that we'll make the call, and we will make a definite call at that point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Sir?
Any other questions? Okay, we've had an extensive presentation. I would like to thank everybody for their presentations. Thanks my colleagues for hanging in there almost a half hour over the usual time. And I'll now see if there is any miscellaneous business. Hearing none, and there being nothing further to hold our attention, this meeting stands adjourned. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye, Zig.
Aye.
Bye.
Bye.
Isaac.
Oh, my
Bye-bye.
God.